Hello, this is the Provoked Prawn, and this is Roland's Bridgecast X. Now, this is potentially a really interesting device if you're a streamer or a content creator. As you can see, it's a pretty funky looking thing. XLR capable, I've got the Shure SM7DB plugged into it right now. Also has two HDMI inputs and an HDMI throughput, as well as multiple USB connections. And as you can see, hardware controls for a variety of things, control pads, sound pads, special effects, and all sorts of other things. So I'm going to dive into a really long and in-depth video on this control box and talk about the various different things of interest, the highlights and lowlights of it, the good and bad, and show you all the things that I've discovered, the things that you can do and the things that you can't with it, and hopefully it'll give you a good insight into it. I will say though, as you can hear, it makes the mic sound fantastic and is multi-device capable, making it really interesting, but also has some very nice highlights if you're a content creator that wants to separate out audio channels into various different mixes: mic, game, HDMI, music, chat, sound effects. You could have them on different audio channels in OBS. I'm going to show you how to do that later in the video and the highlights of that and why it's useful. So stick with me and see what you think, and let me know in the comments down below if this is something you're interested in. So one of the cool features of this Bridgecast X is potentially two HDMI inputs. So you can see from here that you've got HDMI 1, which I've already got connected, which is this top-down camera, and then HDMI 2, so you could take another source and plug into it. Now there's also a throughput, so you can have an output which basically allows you to then put that out to a monitor potentially. Now this is quite exciting. I initially thought this was going to be pretty good because then you could have a secondary source. So obviously I've got a top-down camera. I've also got this camera off to the side, which potentially is plugged into it. So I've got the camera plugged into it and powered on. But what you can't do is then add a video capture device to have another one. So if we go into here, obviously you can't add Bridgecast as an additional camera. It just won't work. You have to actually switch sources. So now you can see got this additional camera here. Now you can switch between them, but there's a bit of a delay, so it's not seamless switching between two different sources, sadly. And you can't have like side by side, so you couldn't use it. Now I initially thought this could be really cool because you could have like a top-down view, or maybe two top-down views, one of your camera, one of your keyboard, one of your mouse, or just for different views. This is not a very flattering view of me, so I'm going to put it back to this one. But you can see this then allows for these different sources. Obviously, you could use a console, or you could use another PC, so you could have secondary PC, so you could use this as a dual PC streaming setup as an option. So you run your PC into this via HDMI. You can then control the audio and do various things to it within the Bridgecast app, but sadly you can't run both sources at the same time, and switching between them is also not seamless. So one of the downsides of the Bridgecast X, I think, is the complexity of it. There's no easy setup user interface for it. I'm going to do a setup guide on it, on basic level of setup, but if you have a look at the Roland manual, which by the way I'll link, so you can see just how many sort of pages there are in here and the detailed complexities of it. If you look at this sort of setup of what they recommend connecting to it, you get an idea of the different things that you can do. So you can plug a lot of different things into it, in fairness. Headset, headphones, XLR microphone, mobile devices, speakers. You can plug a console in via USB connection. You can switch into that with a button on the back. You've got HDMI in, two of them, and the through for monitoring as well. And you've got power connections. A side note on this is that the power connector at the back basically doesn't have a plug. So there's a power cable included, but there's no plug included there. So you have to get your own plug. And the cable is stupidly short, which is really annoying. You can potentially power the system off USB 2 if you've got a USB-C port on your PC, which will put out enough power to do it. Another downside here is also there isn't a power button on the Bridgecast X at all, so it's permanently on unless you pull the cables out of the back of it, which is not ideal. So it's quite complicated, I think, and if you are thinking about setting up into dual PC streaming, you'll probably find that pretty complicated. And also, if you look at the settings for like the mic settings, so if you do the mic setup, the mic cleanup, this might be quite intimidating for a lot of people. You've got low cut, noise suppressor, changing all those levels, compressor, ratio, attack, release, and other things. Then you've got the same thing for chat settings, so you can go in there and change those. You can put a compressor and de-esser on. There's a lot that you can do, but it might be really intimidating if you're new to this sort of thing, and it could be quite complicated, especially if you got this thinking, oh, it's going to be straightforward to be able to pull in a second PC and a streaming setup. It is very capable, but it also is quite complicated with initial setup. So here I'm going to show you some of the basic things to know about the Bridgecast X, and I'm going to multi-window this so it's easy to see. So obviously you can see the Bridgecast, you can see the Bridgecast app, and you'll be able to see Windows sound settings as well. And we talk about the various different things in here, because it can be a bit intimidating in the number of different things that are available on here. But actually there's a lot of functionality, some of which you might not use and some you will. So I want to talk to you about what's cool and what's useful in here, depending on what you're doing. First thing I notice is in the app, you can see we have various different volumes, for example, for the mic. So you can see we've got mic levels, you've got personal mix, you've got a stream mix. You also have, as you can see at hardware level, we've got mic, chat, HDMI, and game as the hardware settings in here. You can actually change these as well. So these are marked as hardware level, obviously, but we can change them in the drop downs in the app to other ones, because what you'll see below is there's also auxiliary, music, system, and sound effects. There's other options, so you can actually put those onto the dial instead. So if you're not using an HDMI input, you could switch it to sound effects, and then you can adjust the volume of the sound effects on here instead at hardware level. So it's pretty handy there in what you can do. Now I am actually using HDMI at the moment, which is how you've got this view through the camera, because the camera's running through into this, and then you've got HDMI in. So that allows you to capture footage. Now this has various different uses, because obviously you can pull in consoles. There's 2 HDMI ports, so you could pull in one camera or another camera. You can also pull in games consoles or a second PC, so you can have a streaming setup there. So there's lots of functionality there. The other thing is, you'll notice we have mute buttons, so you can mute each of the channels. So you can just press that to mute them. One of the things you'll notice is I've got HDMI muted right now, because the HDMI audio is actually being pulled through. So if I press this and unmute it, that sound is actually from the HDMI now. So I'm going to mute that on both of them. And this is the difference here as well. There's a stream mix and a personal mix button. So you can press this and you can adjust the volumes. What this allows you to do is to play music, for example. So you can play music through here, and perhaps you might want it so that the music could be adjusted. Now music as default goes on the game dial, which I want to talk about in a little while as well. But you can also reassign it. So you might want HDMI to be music, for example. But what you can do is you can set a volume. So you can have a volume at a certain level for the stream mix. So that's what your audience will hear. Or change it so that you don't hear any music. So maybe you can set it so you hear no music, so the volume's on non-existent, but your stream hears a decent level of music. This means that you can put background audio on when you're streaming on Twitch, for example, with copyright-free music, which I'll get to in a bit, because this has music actually included with it for free or at a certain rate. So you can go into BGM Cast and pay for additional music, but you have the option, and you can do this with each of these. So you might want to turn chat up or down, so that'd be Discord chat, for example. You could adjust the levels of that in the stream and also set it up for yourself in there. Additionally, you have other things at hardware level. Obviously we have mic effects, so you can turn on the mic effects and then you can cycle through various different effects here, and you can make yourself sound a little bit different, and you can also adjust it even more and tweak the dials here, so you can change all that, and you can adjust the pitch and perform on the fly and save those. Bit gimmicky. Not a mega fan of that personally, but it is available to you to be able to do that. And then you've got the sound effects buttons on the right hand side here, and these buttons are also programmable in other ways, so I want to show you that because that's pretty interesting in what you can do there. If we go onto the mic setup settings, you can see the XLR settings. So I'm using an XLR microphone, and you can adjust the gain here on this setting, and that's the gain of the microphone, so how much gain the mic's got. I'm using a Shure SM7DB in this setting here. There's the XLR mic plugged into the back. Now, you can adjust the gain levels in the app by bringing them up and down. Obviously, more gain means more background noise potentially, so you have to be careful with that. But you can also adjust the volume of your microphone here. So this is not the volume of the mic in terms of gain, but the volume of what I'm hearing through my headset. And then also obviously you can do the same for the stream, so you can go in, you can change what the stream's going to hear, so that stream mix and the output there, you can adjust that. You can also press and hold the mic button here and then twizzle this knob and adjust the gain levels, so you can do that without the need to use the software. So you can do that at hardware level and adjust the gain. You won't be doing that very often, but it's nice to have that. Then for the mic cleanup settings, as you can see, a variety of different settings in here for basically suppressing noise, de-esser, so you can take some of the S's out, compressor, which basically adjusts the levels so you're never too loud and never too quiet, and you can change these. Now, this isn't very user-friendly in terms of you have to know what you're doing. You'll have to play around with these settings. It's going to vary depending on your environment, your voice, your microphone, how loud you get and other things, so it's quite complicated. It's not terribly user-friendly, but the noise suppressor does have an adaptive mode. So with that one, for example, and this is probably going to be the most used in terms of what you're doing, is obviously noise suppression, eliminating background noise, fans, air conditioners, and other things. You want to basically use a noise suppressor to do that. Most people will have that problem and want to get rid of it. There's an adaptive mode which basically does it for you and works it out. Now, I don't really like this because, as you can hear, it changes my voice quite a bit. You can adjust the levels of it. But if you are trying to do the noise gate and you're getting frustrated with it because you can't work out what the attack and release should be or what decibel level it should be, you can use the adaptive as an alternative, and you might find that it works perfectly well for you. You also see you can adjust the EQ. You can go into detail here and tweak those various different settings. Unfortunately, there's no presets. It'd be nice to see some presets in here, but otherwise it's fairly straightforward. Then the mic effects, which is basically the same thing that I just went through here. I'm not going to spend a great deal of time on that because I frankly think it's a bit gimmicky, but you can tweak the mic effects in what you want to do, what we just did with those various effects there, and then changing, as you can see, the pitch and formant. So when you adjust stuff at hardware level, it also adjusts it in the app, and you can add in extra ones and tweak those and play around with those. The game settings are pretty interesting because you can basically choose from various different profiles. So you can see we've got Apex Legends, Valorant, Fortnite, COD as default ones in here, but there's also a library of other ones, and there's a list, a fairly decent list of various different games. I can't actually tell you what they all are because they've got a stupid naming convention, but I think that one's Escape from Tarkov, for example. Overwatch 2, I don't know what PVBG is. Those are various different EQ profiles that you can go into. There's a limiter, so you can turn this on and limit the levels of the game audio, which basically will stop gun sounds, for example, from being really loud and obnoxious in games, and that can be beneficial if you don't want to get your ears hurt. One of the cool things about this setup is the virtual surround sound. So you can actually go in here and turn the virtual surround sound on. Now, I'm using a straight USB connection, so I've got power connection to the power supply and then a single USB connection to a single PC. You can turn on game USB settings, and then you can have virtual surround sound for audio that doesn't have that, which is pretty interesting. Very interesting for music, but it can apply to games as well. You can also apply this to an HDMI source, so if you're running a console into it, you can click on that. The HDMI incoming source will then have this virtual surround sound adjusted to it, And you can then tweak, as you can see, the position of the speakers. I actually found this quite interesting to play around with, and I recommend giving it a go because it is quite curious. One of the other cool settings of this is the chat settings, which is for compressor and de-esser. This is for Discord or whatever you've got assigned as your chat tool on here. So essentially this allows you to put a compressor on, which will then make sure that all your friends are at a good level, so that the lows are brought up and the highs are squashed down, so that people aren't shouting and being obnoxious when someone else is really quiet. And it should help with basically making sure everyone's at the same level. And then you've got a de-esser to take the S's out of people's voices. So you've got some nice features there that might be worth playing around with. The control pad allows you to cycle through various different settings in here. As you can see, if you press the bottom two buttons, you can go through various different pages of effects and other things. So you'll see that there are sound effects here, and I've actually reprogrammed one of them. And so when I press this one, it will say, "Hello, this is the Provoked Prawn. Hello, this is the Provoked Prawn. Hello, this is the Provoked Prawn." And then there's a swoosh sound effect on this one. And then on this button, there's a beep, so you can obviously bleep out swears. It's quite loud though. But you can obviously reprogram these with different sound effects, including recording your own with a WAV file, as long as it's 44 kilohertz. Any higher and it won't work for some reason, which is a random thing I found when testing this out. And you can access a library of different sound effects when you sign up to Roland's own personal music library. So you can get a free version which has additional sound effects, or you can pay a subscription for more sound effects and music that you can then add to these buttons so that you can easily play those. We've got a reverb, so you can turn reverb on and off, which basically applies a sound effect immediately, and you'll notice the mic effects is then on. And then you can cycle through other things. Now, there's some nice shortcuts in here, which I want to go into depth in a little bit separately, but you can see we've got some shortcuts set up. So Control-Shift-1, Control-Shift-2, Control-Shift-3, Control-Shift-4. So those are basically keyboard macros of a sort, hotkeys that you can use. Maybe you can program them into OBS or something else. You might want to change them. So obviously you can change the button combination into something completely different if you wanted, but it has to be Control or Alt or something like that. But you could do Control V maybe as paste, and then save that into there, into that hotkey. I'm not going to do that right now, but that's one of the things that you can do. So you can do that. And then you can see this goes on, and there are various different other ones. Then you get into the BGM cast setting. So if you look here, you'll see BGM cast. BGM cast is down here, which is access to background music and sound effects, copyright free. You can get a free Roland account, which you can sign up for, log into this, and then you have various different sound effects and music that you can play back through these areas here and basically give you access to it. So on this screen, you can see that you can pay $2.99 a month, $29.99 annually, or go for a free plan. And depending on what you do, you'll get more access to more things. Once you've done that, you then have access to sound effects. So you can see on this free plan, we've got access to a few of those. And then you've got music that you can use, that you can play from here. And you can create a playlist. So you could have a background music playlist for playing on stream, for example. And naturally, this is copyright free. So it's perfect for streamers and content creators in theory, because you don't have to worry about copyright strikes. So you could play that and then put those in there. Obviously, signing up will give you access to more options. Although I don't know what happens if you sign up and then cancel, whether you still have that copyright-free nature applied to the music that was additionally added in the paid version. Something to bear in mind there. But now what I want to show you is how to set this up in Windows. So when you plug in for a USB connection, whether it's USB 2 or USB 1, I'm using 2, you'll see in the Windows sound settings, under sound, we have speakers, music, system, chat, as the various different settings from the Bridgecast X in here. You also down in the mic section have submix, mic, and stream. This enables you to then basically put audio into certain things. So you can then set it up so that the audio for each is going to get pulled through properly. Obvious one will be the game settings. I'm going to show you how to set up an OBS and what you can do with it. Because you obviously, with these hardware levels of audio, we also have virtual channels. So you've seen them in Windows Sound Settings. So if we go into OBS and click on Settings, and then go over to Audio, and then go to the mic drop down, and then set it to stream. You'll notice I've got everything else disabled. So just the mic audio is the stream mix, and click Apply. This then gives you just the mic audio in here and everything else mixed into one. So this includes all the different things for your stream mix. That includes, for example, the various different sound effects. That's obviously into the stream mix as well. And it will include other things like your game audio, your HDMI and chat, as I'll show you in a minute. And then that will be output to Twitch, for example, or to YouTube, depending on where you're streaming. Now, what I like to do is actually to do more than this. So go desktop audio, and you'll see there's various other drop-downs options here. So you have speakers, for example. You could also have music or chat as an alternative. So you might want chat, perhaps. And you can then also have mic. And so we've got multiples in here. And then you click Apply. Now, the reason to do this is because, as you can see, we've got two mic audios now. One is actually the stream audio, and one is just my microphone. So you can see this one's the stream audio. You can rename it, just so you know which one's which. So that's what the audience is hearing, and then you've got a mic setting in here. Now, if you click and right-click and go Advanced Audio Properties, you'll then see that we have this set up with all of these different tracks. So I'm just going to untick all of these. What I like to do is this. So we know that stream mix, if you're streaming, obviously you want the stream mix to go to the stream. So tick that as track 1. And then perhaps your game audio will be track 2, and then chat's track 3, and then your other mic's track 4. So you do that. Now these are then recorded into separate tracks. If you go into the output settings, and then you see down here, under the recording section, I've got it set up so I have 4 audio tracks being recorded. This means that those tracks I've separated out now will then be separate audio tracks that you can then edit within DaVinci Resolve, for example, or whatever program you use. And this is really handy because it means that the audio is separated out for your friend's audio, for example, your game audio, your microphone, and then one great big stream mix. I find this really handy when making gameplay videos, because it means if you've got your friends talking over an important point in the game, you can just reduce their levels within Resolve and really easily get rid of that. Now with stream settings, generally speaking, it's set so there's only one audio track. So if you go to the advanced setting here, for example, you'll see streaming audio track is track 1. I obviously made that track 1 in the advanced audio settings there, so now that'll be track 1. And under here, if you're on advanced, you'll also want to make sure you've got these all ticked. I had mine set to simple, but as default, that's what you want to do. And then you should have recordings with all those different sound effects in them. Now the next thing to do is to set up Windows sound settings and make some changes here, because obviously we've got a variety of things in here. So what you want to do is grab Spotify, for example, and then we're going to get Stream Beats as another example of something. You can see that's now playing into the stream mix. This is Harris Heller's copyright-free music in there. But obviously this is going into the system, setting at the moment, so you can't even see it on there. And ideally we want to be able to control it. What we're going to do is go down into the volume mixer, then find Spotify, and then set that as output to music. And then in the Bridgecast app, because we're not going to be using HDMI for anything, you can then set that to music instead. And this gives you the ability to then adjust the volume levels of the music on the fly. And this is adjusting it for me personally. So what you want to do is change it to stream mix, because you'll see in OBS that it wasn't actually changing. And now I can change the levels here. I can dial it right down so you can't hear it anymore, and then I can put it up. And then obviously you can also mute it entirely. So that's now muted to the stream mix, if you want to do that. But maybe, as I said, you want to perhaps have a low level of music for the stream. But then when I press this button, if I drop that down, I now can't hear that at all. And I'm not hearing it playing back through the headphones, but it's still going in the stream because you can see it here in this mix. So those levels are still going up, so you know it's then appearing into the stream mix. So if under the settings for the audio, if you wanted to have this as a separate track, you could then choose from desktop audio, music, apply that, and then you'll see now we have audio for music as a separate track in here. So as well as being in the stream mix, then you've got a separate audio track with the desktop audio where that's the music. Now I personally prefer to have this as the chat audio, so I'm going to put this back to chat. And that's how you'd set that up. So another thing to do obviously is to set for chat. So what we're going to do is take Discord. Go into Discord. And then what you want to do is click down at the bottom left here, user settings, and then click into voice and video. And then you want to set this so it's then set as the output is chat and the input is mic. So you can see it's defaulted to mic, but you want to make sure this is set to chat. That way when your friends are talking to you, that will then go into the chat audio, so it will then appear in the chat audio that we've set up here. And obviously you can then adjust that as well, so you can adjust the levels using this in the same way. So you have stream mix and personal mix, so depending on whether they're loud enough or not, for example, you can go through those and tweak that. And because it's separated out, you can then adjust that level in the recordings as well, nice and easily. So in order to adjust the game sound, you need to repeat the same sort of process. So with the music sound, for example, and changing it in the app, so in the volume mixer, you obviously have to have Spotify running in order to be able to do that. To make sure that a game appears on the game dial, which is where you want it so you can adjust the volumes for the stream mix, you first have to launch the game. So if we do this, for example, I'm just going to quickly launch Escape from Tarkov, and you'll see that Tarkov has now appeared here in this game section. So what we can do now is you select from the drop down and just go to the output device and make sure it's set to the right thing, which in this case would be speakers. So when the game's launched, you have to select from the drop down. You think game would be in here, but it's actually speakers is the setting you want. And you'll see that if you look at the Bridgecast, because you'll see in this game section it actually says speakers in brackets, which is a bit confusing, but basically game is set in here. And then you can adjust the volume on the game dial for the game, so you can adjust what level you're hearing and also what the stream's hearing, so you can tweak that. So you can maybe drop the game levels down the stream so that they don't hear as much of the game audio. And obviously you can change between those. You can also link these, by the way, if you'd like them to be the same. Press the little link button and basically link those two volumes together. So you have to do that with each game that you've got in the settings, because otherwise it's default. Doing this makes no difference. So the default settings is basically gone into speakers, into system sounds, which would be this one. And then you can adjust it. But if you want it as a separate audio track, you have to make sure that it's set to the speakers section. So as an example clip from the setup of what I've got, if I drag this in, you'll see there are multiple audio clips in here. This first track is the stream audio, so it includes everything. You can see actually I need to probably bring the levels up of that because its default is quite low. The second one is just the game audio, so that's just game. This one is chat. There was no one talking on Discord at the time, so it's not visible. And then this one's mic audio. So the benefit of this, obviously, is if you want to, you could reduce the stream audio, because this includes the music. So this includes music in it. So if I just turn my mic down, you'll see that you've got music playing in there, and the game audio, and everything else. So if I don't want that for YouTube clips, for example, you can just bring this up, and now I've got just the game audio, and then you can put my mic back into it, for example. It's definitely dead. Do you just throw that point blank? And then you can just take that out, or you can adjust the levels of it afterwards. So if you just want a clean audio clip of the game, you can do that in this way, and that'll do it. One cool feature of the Bridgecast is the ability to use the control pad for the hotkeys. So you can see in the control pad settings, if you press these bottom ones, you can cycle into 2 levels of hotkeys. And as default, it's Control Shift 1, Control Shift 2, Control Shift 3, Control Shift 4, 5, 6, 7. But you can obviously change these. Now, this one, for example, let's change this. I like to have Control and 0 as a control I actually use in OBS. So what I'm going to do is set that up in here to this first one. So we'll put that as Control plus 0. And then write it to number 1 and save it. The reason I do this is in the settings within OBS, so in the hotkeys section, I have save replay as Control and 0. So what I like to do is have my replay buffer running so that I'm recording here within OBS, and then when I press Control and 0, it then captures a clip, so you can see down the bottom here that its replay buffer has then been saved. So now what I've done is I've set this up so that with a press on the control pad instead, you can do the same thing. So all we've got to do now is just press this button on here. So you can set up a shortcut within OBS to then allow you to easily just press one button and to do a shortcut and whatever you want, whether it's starting streaming, stopping streaming, start recording. You can do that as long as you can set up a hotkey section in here. So there's loads of different options in here for what you could do potentially with it. So obviously, as I said, start recording, stop recording. You could set a short key combination in that. Now with the hotkeys, you have to do a combination of Alt and Control, for example. You've seen it's Control Shift, but in this instance, I'm using just Control. But that allows you to then have some hotkeys assigned in there, which is pretty neat. So one of the cool things about the Bridgecast X is obviously being able to monitor everything, because you can plug in your cable, so you can plug into the headphone jacks. There's a headphone jack at the back. You'll actually take headsets as well, so if you have a headset with a microphone built into it, you can plug it into there. Also has auxiliary and line out connections. Now, I had this plugged into the DT770 Pro from Beyerdynamic, but what I've also discovered is it's also possible to do it wirelessly. So this is from the Razer Kraken V4 Pro, which is a wireless headset, and actually this cable is running from the headphone jack to the wireless base station of the V4 Pro. And then what you need to do on the wireless base station, if you have the possibility of doing this on your wireless device, is to go to the input source. So in this instance, there's an auxiliary. So there's USB usually, but then there's auxiliary. So if you select the auxiliary instead, it's obviously then taking the 3.5mm connection. But that means I can then wirelessly mic monitor everything that's in the audio over the Bridgecast will then go into this. So all the different channels, the mic, the chat, the music or HDMI, and the game sounds are now passing through there and into this, but then wirelessly going to the Kraken V4 Pro. As you can see, there's a lot to like about the Roland Bridgecast X. It's pretty capable in a number of ways. If you're pulling in other devices, whether it's cameras, consoles, a second PC. I haven't shown how to do that because I don't have two PCs to be able to do that at the moment. And frankly, I don't believe in dual PC streaming anyway. I've used a single PC for doing that in the past. But even if you want to do that and you want to record clips for your gameplay channel, it's really capable of doing that. Allows for really easy adjustment of audio on the fly, and obviously pulling in various different devices in HDMI settings and USB and 3.5mm. If you just want an audio device though, the original Bridgecast is an alternative which doesn't have any HDMI inputs. It's just all about the audio. I've done a separate video on this a while back that I'll link to in the description. And that's available in white as well, which as you can see looks really nice. So two fantastic options. The Bridgecast X is well worth considering. I'm going to do a separate setup guide on it if you're interested, but hopefully you found this useful. Thanks for watching.